Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Odpp Café. My name is Anita Onuko. Glad to start this show again this year. It was quite an interesting ride. 2021, we did about 40 episodes discussing the criminal justice system. For those who are in contact with the law or in conflict with the law, you got to learn about how to react or how to go about it. We learned a few terms, not actually a few, we learned a lot of things last year, and I'm hoping to learn more this year. So this year we start the show because on hate speech and electoral justice, and all because this year is an election year. So we'll be discussing a lot about how to conduct ourselves during the elections and what to do or what not to do and what is expected of us as citizens. So this show is brought to you courtesy of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We are live on Facebook and we're glad to be back. We were away for so long because of course technology issues, but we got our page back and we're so glad to be back, and we're glad for you guys to join us for this year's season. So we are also on YouTube at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We welcome you to subscribe. We welcome you to invite your friends and your colleagues to subscribe. Get to learn something about the criminal justice system, because ultimately knowledge is power. We are also on Twitter at Odpp_KE. And of course, today we are live and we welcome you to comment, to ask a question. We have experts on the show and a very good panel as it is. And we'll get to know exactly what they think about election and how prepared the different some cases that we think we should highlight for you today. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's quite always a pleasure having you on the show, and of course engaging with you on different topics and of course the things you're talking about today. Please don't forget to tell us where you're watching us from, comment, like, and also invite your friends to follow us on the show. So I'm going to start with what has been happening at Odpp. Of course, this segment tells you about the courts and what has been happening at Odpp. So this week, the Odpp was at an anti-terror workshop. It held a 5-day workshop at the Great Rift Valley Lodge in Naivasha. The workshop was meant to develop guidelines on cooperation and collaboration in the investigation and prosecution of terrorism cases. So this was a workshop that was held by Odpp in Naivasha. The stakeholders present were National Intelligence Service, CBK, the Judiciary, National Police Service, Asset Recovery Agency, National Counterterrorism Center, Joint Terrorism Task Force Kenya, Amnesty Kenya, International Justice Mission, and Haki Africa. I'm smiling because there are quite a number of agencies that deal with this. I actually wasn't aware. And of course, the show is meant to inform, and I also get informed along the way as I talk about these things. This is now a case from court. 3 convicted for drug trafficking. 3 men were sentenced to 20 years imprisonment after the prosecution through Victor War and Alan Magero, those are the prosecutors, proved its drug trafficking case against them. Julius Nkolong, Adam Mugambi, and Mohammed Adan were found guilty of trafficking 446 kgs of cannabis sativa, aka Bangi. So the name is Adam and not Adan. So it's Adam Mugambi and Mohammed Adan, or should I say Adan? 2 different names. The trio were also given an additional fine of, get this, 40 million or a further 1 year in default. They have 2 weeks to appeal the sentence. We talked about appeal last year, and I hope you learned something, but you can always repeat it, and definitely just so that we get to understand the concept much better. This other one is about an activity at the Odpp again. Odpp conducts plea bargaining and diversion policy sensitization. We also discussed plea bargaining last year and diversion. And again, I'm saying we can repeat this for the sake of just getting totally a good understanding of how these things work. So through local radio stations, they sensitize the locals in North Rift region on plea bargaining and diversion policies. This was done by Peter Kiprop, one of the prosecutors here. The office has been discussing on Emo FM. Emo FM must be one of those regional stations in the North Rift. So Odpp, again in collaboration with UNODC, has conducted similar sensitizations in Wajir, Garissa counties, Coast, Nairobi, and Nyanza regions. And the policies, of course, they are discussing it with the public because they're aimed at, amongst others, reducing case backlog and decongesting prisons. Like I always say, this show is meant to tell you what to do when you are either in conflict or in contact with the law. So you get to understand these policies and then get to know how to apply it. or you advise someone in your areas what to do when they are in conflict or in contact with the law. So plea bargain and diversion are one of those things that we really need to understand. This other one is a case from the courts. 2 get life imprisonment for robbery with violence. 2 men found guilty of robbery with violence were jailed for life by a Garissa court after the prosecution led by Victor and Alan proved its case against them. Daniel Macau and Alexander Mosioka were found guilty of robbing a man and in the process killing him. So they were found guilty of robbery with violence. The prosecution proved their case by presenting footage showing the second accused entering the premises at 4 a.m. while holding the metal rod that was used to kill the victim. Again, they have 14 days to make an appeal. So they can definitely appeal the sentence and see what the courts say about it. The other case is about quite a sad story here. A man gets 30 years for defilement. He was found guilty of defiling his 2-year-old stepdaughter in 2015. So he got 30 years for defilement for this. The prosecution, led by James Gashoka, presented evidence from the mother, 2 doctors, and the investigating officer, revealing that the child had not only been sexually assaulted, but had also been scalded in her private parts. He also has 14 days to appeal. Quite a sad story going on there. So those were the cases in court that I thought I should highlight today. And of course, what has been happening at the Odpp, a lot of sensitization going on, a lot of engaging the public like we're doing here today. And I welcome you to learn. The show is about educating you, about informing you and sensitizing you about the justice system. And we don't do this alone. We always invite partners or other actors in the system to also help explain some things, because we've talked about the justice system and we say you cannot operate alone, you have to work in collaboration with, and there's great emphasis on collaboration with other agencies. So quickly, we want to get into the show, and I want to invite my panelists. I told you it's a power panelist. Washikadau wa elections wako hapa leo, and we want to engage them. I want you to feel free and ask questions and see how they respond to them. But before we get into the question section, we are going to discuss a few of these things. And I know, like I was telling them today, we have to talk about elections, hate speech. We want to talk about corruption and elections. And we want to talk about, collaboration? Yes. So I want to start with you. Kindly introduce yourself and tell us where your organization.
Thank you very much, Anita. Happy for you to host me today. And I appreciate to appear on the show. My name is Ali Abdullahi, and I am the Assistant Registrar of Political Parties in the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. Mm-hmm. As you are all aware, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties is a state office in the meaning of Article 260 of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And it has a very clear mandate, and its mandate is to register political parties, to regulate political parties, and also to administer political parties fund. Okay. In summary, that is the main mandate. But if you go to the functions are very many originating from that mandate, and it includes the registration of political parties, supervision of how political parties conduct their activities, ensuring that political parties are complying with the law with regards to the Constitution, to the Political Parties Act, and to the Elections Act, and all the other acts related to activities of political parties. Mm-hmm. We also ensure that political parties are institutionalized and they are also accountable to its members and to supporters. Mm-hmm. In terms of fund management, they are supposed to be also accountable and transparent, and they are supposed to submit their financial accounts and assets and liabilities to the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. So we ensure that published audited accounts are made public. The audited accounts of political parties are made public. We also investigate complaints against political parties, all complaints related to the Political Parties Act, and we supervise. We also make available list of members of political parties, as well as keep and maintain the register of political parties, as well as their slogans and symbols. Okay. So basically, those are the main functions of a political party. at the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties.
Okay, karibu sana to the show, Mr.
Thank you
Ali,
very much.
and thank you for gracing our first show of the year.
Thank you.
Yes. I will skip you, Mark.
No.
But then I want to go to you, Mr. Weir. Kindly, karibu sana, first of all, and just tell us your names and what you do and where you do it.
Thank you very much, Anita.
Yeah.
My name is Crispin Owiem. I'm an advocate by profession. I work at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. At IBC, I am I'm in charge of the Directorate of Legal Services that is responsible for advising the Commission principally on legal issues. At IBC, we conduct elections. We also supervise elections and referenda. That is the overarching mandate of the Commission. Of course, there are 11 other broad mandates that include the continuous registration of voters that is currently ongoing. Of course, enhanced continuous voter registration. We also revise the voters' roll. We conduct voter education. Voter education and not civic education.
What's the difference?
There is a distinction between voter education and civic education. Civic education is broad. Voter education is about the electoral process, the voting process. At IBC, we have the mandate to develop an electoral code of conduct, and that is already developed and ingrained in the Elections Act. The code of conduct binds candidates, binds political parties, binds leaders of political parties, binds their agents, binds the supporters of those political parties. So it's an omnibus code that generally regulates the manner in which elections is conducted and ensures that those elections are conducted in an environment that is conducive for all contestants, an environment that is devoid of violence, that is devoid of intimidation, and that is devoid of reprisals. So that code ensures that there is a level playing ground for all candidates, so that in the end of it, candidates campaign and a free, fair, and secure election is realized. I'll be going deeper into those mandates in the course of the discussion.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming to the show. We've
Thank you
always
very
been
much.
looking forward, and Mark is my witness, to have IEBC join us on that show as well as ORPP.
Yeah.
So Mark, just for those who have never seen you on the show, and I hope they have actually, please introduce yourself and your mandate here at Odpp.
Thank you very much, Anita, once again for having me here in this show. My name is Mark Baratza. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, working for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions derives its mandate under Article 157 of the Constitution of Kenya. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions exercises state powers of prosecutions. We receive complaints. We direct the Inspector General of Police. Under the Constitution, the Director of Public Prosecutions has powers to direct the Inspector General of Police to conduct investigations where there is a complaint about a crime. We are also established by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions Act, and under that legislation, there is a provision for state bodies, state officers, and public officers to cooperate with the Director of Public Prosecutions in the exercise of his mandate. Therefore, in relation to elections, the Director of Public Prosecutions has established the Hate Speech and Electoral Justice Division to ensure that issues relating to elections and complaints of voter bribery, intimidation, corruption, and all cases relating to hate speech are properly investigated and recorded. Therefore, our mandate in relation to elections, we shall be receiving complaints. We have offices throughout the Republic of Kenya in all counties and sub-counties. we've established, you'll find the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions there. In all counties and in all sub-counties where there is a court, there is also an Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions with the Prosecution Council there, ready to receive complaints from the public so that investigations can be done by the investigatory bodies, which are the police, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, the IEBC. Once they have done their investigations, they will forward the file to the Director of Public Prosecutions. He will review the file. If there is sufficient evidence, then the Director of Public Prosecution makes a decision to charge. So the investigatory bodies investigate, the Director of Public Prosecution reviews the investigation files for evidence sufficiency before making now the decision to charge. So issues of voter bribery, corruption, intimidation, and undue influence during the elections, those are criminal acts, and we are ready at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to handle such cases, to ensure that the elections are free from intimidation, free from fear, and the democratic will of the people is exercised freely.
Okay, we'll discuss more of that in a bit, the fairness and the intimidation, because when elections come, the election season is actually a very fearful season for most Kenyans.
Sure.
And it always just comes out of this whole intimidation and of course hate speech. But before we get into that, Mark, and so we are now just back to IBC.
Yes.
The most basic question then, what does election preparedness mean to IBC? Are we ever going to be late?
Thank you very much, Anita. In answer to that question, I want to make an announcement. That today the general election notice will be out.
Oh.
Officially gazetted and appearing in the National Kenya Gazette.
That means the date?
That means that the commission is required under the Elections Act to gazette the general election date.
Okay.
That general election notice captures a notice in respect of the election of the president, a notice in respect to election of the members of the National Assembly and the Senate, a notice in respect to the election of governors, that is the county government, and a notice in respect to the election of members of the county assemblies. Now, the publication of that notice marks the coming into force of two legal instruments that are very key in the regulation of the general election.
Yes.
The first legal instrument in respect of the general election, of course, it is a law that exists, but in respect of the general election is the Election Offences Act of 2016. So effective today, one can be investigated, one can be arrested, and one can be prosecuted for contravention of the Election Offences Act.
What's the overview of the Election Offences Act?
The Election Offences Act is an act of parliament that regulates the regime of election offences during elections. It is not a very big act, but it is quite a powerful act. Powerful in the sense that you can list about 17 broad election offences that may be committed. And these offences range from offences relating to registration of voters, which is currently going on. So if a person, for instance, applies to be registered as a voter twice or more than once, then he commits an election offense and is prosecutable. There are offenses that relate to actions that may be committed by voters, that may be committed by candidates, that may be committed by political parties during the voting process. So they are quite broad-based. We have bribery as an offense, we have violence, perpetration of violence, we have intimidation, we have undue influence as an offense. We have offenses that may be committed by IBC staff. For instance, under Section 6 of the Election Offences Act, that section enumerates quite a number of offenses that may be committed by IBC staff, including myself and the commissioners. And it also provides for offenses that relate to breach of technology at section 17, which again is very broad in terms of actions by IBC staff or actions by members of the public that may amount to a contravention of technology that is deployed to facilitate the elections. That act resides, its enforcement resides with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution.
Okay.
And as my learned colleague said, it is ODPP that has the power under that act to direct the Inspector General and the National Police Service at large to investigate those persons who are suspected to have committed election offenses. Then ODPP now prosecutes. Okay. It is the sole institution under that act that has power and mandate to prosecute election offenses. How does IBC come in under the Election Offences Act? IBC, under collaboration framework with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, facilitates two things. The provision of or the securing of witnesses. Okay. Most of the witnesses are IBC staff. We have our returning officers, deputy returning officers, presiding officers, and polling clerks, who essentially become principal witnesses when an election offense is committed during election. IBC again supports in terms of securing exhibits for ODPP. You will note that most of those exhibits are election materials under the custody of the returning officer, for instance, the ballot box, ballot papers.
They're about to be
stamps.
famous.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it is our duty to secure those the evidence, exhibits, and favor the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution with the same, so that the ODPP can then prosecute and realize a conviction if there is evidence.
Okay, how long is the new? Oh, sorry, you had two. Sorry.
Yes,
continue.
the second legal instrument is the Electoral Code of Conduct.
Okay.
Now, the Electoral Code of Conduct is a code developed for purposes of ensuring that elections is conducted in a peaceful environment. And the Commission has a mandate under Article 88(4) to develop that code of the Constitution, to develop the code. Now, Section 110 of the Elections Act requires candidates, requires political parties participating in elections, requires the leaders of those political parties and the supporters to adhere to the Electoral Code of Conduct. Now, during clearance of the candidates, and that will happen between 30th of May and 9th of June, the candidates are required to subscribe to that code by signing the code and committing to abide by the code. In the event of breach of the code, the Commission's Electoral Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee has power to punish any person who breaches the Electoral Code of Conduct.
What are the penalties
there? Powers are sweeping, and I think it was deliberate that those powers be sweeping in order to rein in on those who breach the code. The penalties range from a warning, which is mild. The Commission, yes, the Commission has power to ban a candidate from conducting campaigns. The Commission has power to mete out fines, and we usually impose hefty fines. In the year 2017, we had 71 cases, and we found 37 perpetrators to have breached the code and sentenced them to pay hefty fines, running into millions of shillings, of course, with a condition that failure to pay the fine within 24 hours will lead to a disqualification of that candidate. So largely the candidates comply and ensure that the court
is adhered to. I have a question on that. Do you have to go to court for that whole process of punishing them? We
do not go to court.
Okay.
The Elections Act, under the second schedule of the Elections Act, creates the Electoral Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee, which is a committee of the IEBC. And that committee is chaired by a member of the commission who is qualified to be appointed a High Court. Like that means that chair must be an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with a minimum of 10 years experience. So that committee exercises quasi-judicial authority.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it has power without reference to court to hear and determine breaches of the Electoral Code of Conduct and to punish those who breach the code.
How do you get information about those who breach? Is it from the public or do you investigate yourselves?
Both ways. Members of the public have a right to report to the commission breaches of the Electoral Code of Conduct. The candidates themselves, because they're in competition, have a duty to check on each other and to report to the commission any person who transgresses the code.
Okay.
The commission has a department as well, a department that is in charge of investigations. We have investigators who go to the field to investigate breaches of the Electoral Code of Conduct, either on the commission's own motion or upon the lodging of a complaint before the committee by a member of the public or a candidate.
Okay.
Yes.
Why? That's
and the commission has constitutional power to conduct investigations under Article 252, either upon the lodging of a complaint to it or on its own motion.
Okay. Quite insightful. Thank you for that. So, Mr. Ali, I just want to understand from an ORPP perspective, what does it mean that for election preparedness in your office? What does it entail?
Very important. Thank you for the question. And I want to also agree with Mr. Owiye that now we are in the election proper. After the issue of the Gazette notice, on the notice of the general elections, then we are now in the election mode. And
we have been there from...
Of course, Kenyans are in the mood from one election to the other.
Yes, you're always ready.
But this is the official notice, Gazette notice, which the commission is empowered to issue. Now, from the perspective of RPP, we believe as a regulator of political parties, that political parties are fundamental building blocks for any democracy, especially now the representative democracy that we have in Kenya.
Yes.
And that elections cannot be successful without political parties. They basically, provide candidates. Without political parties, the Electoral Commission will not be able to get candidates. And therefore, from our office, we regulate the activities of political parties. From the word go, political parties are supposed to, have governing bodies that are democratically elected. And political parties are supposed to be institutions that make decisions based on the principles of, they're governed by the Constitution. The Constitution in Article 91 provides requirements for political parties to abide by. And therefore, from the Constitution, we also have the Political Parties Act, which now gives a lot of regulatory framework for regulation and registration of political parties. And political parties contribute to the general election in such a way that they must conduct their affairs in a fair democratic manner. And from the party primaries, political party primaries, aspiring candidates are competing against each other, and parties are able to, present candidates to the commission. So the process of election starts at the party level. Apart from a few candidates, independent candidates who have also the right given by the Constitution, majority of the candidates, especially those who are going for the higher offices, are candidates of political parties. So for us, we have been preparing political parties, institutionalizing them, building capacities of political parties, ensuring that they have governing bodies that are democratically elected, ensuring that they have capacity, they are able to document their processes, they are able to come up with nomination rules and the election rules governing their elections, they are able to come up with constitutions that does not collide with the Constitution of Kenya or even the Political Parties Act or the Elections Act. So we have prepared them for the last 3 years. And
I told you. We start immediately. The cycle starts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for us, our process starts a bit earlier than the commission because we are, engaging political parties on day-to-day basis. Once we register them, we build their capacity. There are certain requirements that they need to abide by. For example, they need to have offices across the country so that they are able to serve members of the public. They should be able to recruit members. They should be having an ideology that they are subscribed to, and they should be having, functioning governing bodies, even at the branch levels. So this is what we regulate. This is what we ensure that we move away from the previous regimes where parties are briefcase, and we go to institutionalized parties that are able to, promote public policy, that are able to govern, that is able to represent, select candidates, and also recruit members. So this is what we have done zealously for the last 3 years, and we believe that political parties, as they are now, they are 84 in number.
84?
Yes, and they are prepared. And Mr. Owiye will agree with me that they submitted the nomination rules, and out of the 84, 83 of them are clear. And
should there be a limit to how many political parties?
There should be no limit because Kenya is a multi-party democracy, and that is what we give ourselves as Kenyans in our constitution. It's a multi-party democracy. There is no cabin, provided that they meet the minimum requirement for registration. We are good to go.
Is Kenya any special because there are so many multi-party democracies across the world? Is it any special because of this number of political parties?
Anita, one thing you don't know is that even the growing democracies, even the democracies that have matured, they have so many parties. The only thing that you know is dominant parties. For example, in the UK, you hear of only the Conservatives and the Labour Party. But do you know that they have over 200 political parties?
Really?
Yes, even in the Americas.
And they're represented in their...
They are represented, most of them, in the Americas. America, at the regional levels, at the state levels, they have more than 300. We have one state which has more than 300 parties because they represent special interests. Some of them are green, others are for climate, others are for anti-abortion, others are all of them espouse a number of different issues.
Their ideology.
There's nothing wrong with having many parties, provided that they meet the requirement. But definitely, you realize that the dominant parties remain very few of them. So from where we sit, there is no limit in terms of the numbers of political parties because Kenya said we want a multi-party system. Multi, meaning there is no limit. There's no limit.
Yes. We cannot let you go without talking about the political amendment bill. Why did we have to watch that? What was it? What was it for me as a citizen?
All right.
From a citizen's perspective, why should Anita care that this thing was going on?
All right.
Yeah.
That's a very important question, and I want to say that from the onset, we support the bill. The Register Political Parties support the bill, and the bill will make the regulatory regime of political parties more clearer.
Yeah.
It also makes it more, enforceable. There are a number of things. The Political Parties Act, when it was enacted, the Political Parties Act was enacted when the Office of the Registrar was a directorate under the Commission, under the Electoral Commission, and also even the Kenya Constitution 2010 was promulgated when the office was still a department within the commission. So now that the office has been established as an independent office and separate from the commission, these amendments address issues of overlap of mandates. There are certain mandates that refers to ORPP conducting it, and also it refers to the commission. So it makes this more clear. There are also, in the implementation of the Act for the last 10 years, we have seen a number of gaps after 10 years. That's why even the Kenya Constitution, there was need to amend it, although it did not go through the BBI system. So in the same case with the Political Parties Act, for the last 10 years, we have seen gaps. And those gaps are addressed with this bill. Similarly, we have some unconstitutional clauses within the Act that are against the Constitution. This bill attempts to remedy that. We have removed a number of sections within the Act that contravenes the Constitution. So the bill, by and large, is a very good bill. I know there are some certain controversies about introductions of the coalition political party and also issues to do with the, register of political parties. These are meant to make sure that, for example, the issue of the register. All along, Kenyans have been complaining about party primaries that are messy, that are violence, full of violence, that certificates are issued in the forest. We have seen those experiences before. So this bill attempts to sanitize that process.
Okay.
So that we have political party primaries that are guided by the law, that are free and fair, that the best candidates gets the certificate from the party. And we are saying that those who are supposed to vote within a political party primary are supposed to be members of those political parties.
So you register and become a member?
You register and become a member, and then you vote for your candidate. Currently, why there is a lot of noise is that parties use the register produced by the IEBC. Okay. Whether somebody is a member of that party or not,
you wouldn't know.
You participate in a primary, for example, for a party.
Yeah.
The same people participate in primaries of another party. So, which defeats the purpose of having political parties.
We are versatile like that as Kenyans.
Exactly. So the bill addresses and it addresses a number of issues.
Okay.
And I believe that if it goes through, it's going to make the regulatory regime more enforceable. It also makes it the political situation more sanitized. Yeah. And of course, it also gives the Office of the Registrar a mandate to be able to undertake some of the powers that it has been given. Without this amendment, the office power has been, it was not.
It remains the same as it has been. Yeah.
And we say that, regulations that are not enforced at best remain good intentions. So some of the things that issues of violence, issues of hatred, issues to do with violence against women within the primaries and disabled, all these are addressed with this bill.
Yeah.
And I want also to touch something on the political parties' code of conduct. If you look at the political parties' code of conduct that all political parties subscribe to, they address all the issues that we talk about, including incitement, hate speech, that parties should not involve in that. They should not involve in violence. They should not involve in influence peddling. They should not be involved in bribery. And that code also bars political parties and their candidates, together with the members and supporters, to cut them from getting involved in corruption, because they have to also abide by principles of Chapter 6. And that code really is what the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties ensure that parties abide by, and we enforce that.
There was contention that it came during the election year, and that was a problem. Was it a problem?
Of course.
Why didn't we do it last year?
Exactly. It's a concern also for us, because in terms of implementation, it's going to be a challenge.
Okay.
And there's also a recommendation by the Curricular Commission that amendments to election laws, election as well as election-related laws, should happen at least a year or more before the elections.
But it happened.
Yeah. So in 2017, we have very few months to elections, the amendments, and of course we cannot also control the calendar of our legislature, and it would have happened earlier. But
so we just say it is what it is.
If it happens, the office is ready to implement.
Okay. So Mark, let's now get back to our hate speech, and that is your forte. Mr. Ali here says there are 84 parties. And they must have ideologies, right?
Yes.
But we know for a fact vitukwa ground ni zingine too. There are no ideologies really, unless they are in paper. But in reality, there are a lot of ethnic, they're tribal based. That's right? That is what our politics has been. And that is what gives you a lot of work. Despite the laws from IBC and ORPP, you still have work to prosecute. So what is hate speech? And even because I know you're a teacher of some sort, how do you differentiate between ethnicity and tribalism? And where does the problem start? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Definition ya darasa. Ethnicity, tribalism, 5 marks. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So freedom of expression is guaranteed under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So at international law, there are conventions and treaties that guarantee freedom of expression. Under the Kenyan Constitution as well, under Article 33, freedom of expression is also guaranteed. However, it is not an absolute right. It has limitations. If it amounts to propaganda for war, for hatred, incitement to violence, there are limitations to that right to freedom of expression. And therefore, any act or speech that advocates hatred against a group of people based on their race, nationality, or a tribe, then it crosses the limitations placed both at international law and under our constitution. And there is also an act of parliament, the National Cohesion and Integration Act, that outlaws or criminalizes hate speech under Article 13 of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. It also creates an offense of ethnic contempt. Therefore, it's not just speech, it can also be a conduct that seeks to cause feelings of hatred against a certain group of people based on their tribe, their ethnicity, their race, or their nationality. It could be pictures, it could be posts on social media. So that is hate speech. It's outlawed in the National Cohesion and Integration Act. There are limitations to freedom of expression at international law, and therefore when it happens, we look mostly at the status of the person making that speech. If it is a politician, then it has a big potential to create violence and a lot of conflict. So the punishment is 1 million, and under the National Cohesion and Integration Act. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission under that act is also empowered to do conciliation. So that is why sometimes these cases are settled out of court.
At what point? Like, do you have to go all the way to court, then you come back and
we do have guidelines, plea bargain guidelines. That is after a plea has been taken, and we have diversion. That is before plea has been taken. So the Director of Public Prosecution has the mandate. He will look at the circumstances of each case, whether it is in the interest of the public to pursue the case up to trial. But the bottom line is that hate speech is dangerous. If not curbed, it can result into more serious crimes against humanity, like genocide. That is why, even though it's deemed to be a misdemeanor, but it is serious, because if not curbed, it can lead to other very serious offenses, crimes against humanity like genocide and murder. They normally start. So people who engage in hate speech, it's like they are playing with a matchstick near a tank full of petrol. It can spark off a very big fire, which will be very difficult to put out. And in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, when we receive such complaints, it doesn't matter which political party the suspect belongs to. We only look at the evidence against such a suspect. That is the only consideration. We are very neutral. We are not favoring any political party. So anybody who engages in hate speech, that person, whenever a report is made, we will call for investigations, regardless of the political affiliation of the suspect. We will call for the investigations. Once the file is brought, we will look at the evidentiary contents of the file. When the status of the person is a politician, we take it very seriously, because this is someone who has a big following in society, and therefore his words are likely, there is a high likelihood of violence as a result of such hate speech. So we are preparing as an office. We are developing standard operating procedures to guide our prosecution counsel in prosecuting these cases, because they are very technical. So we appreciate the Director of Public Prosecution. He has supported us to develop standard operating procedures. So we have the decision to charge guidelines. We are developing standard operating procedures on prosecution of election offenses. the Director of Public Prosecution is also training prosecution counsel on how to handle these offenses because they are very technical. Interfering with the technology is an offense under the Election Offences Act. That's a very new legislation enacted.
What do you mean interfering with technology?
My learned colleague, Mr. Owie, just said that there are around 17 election offenses.
So that's one of them.
Yes, that's one of them.
But then what does that mean for me? I mean, what does it mean interfering with technology?
Elections in Kenya are partly manual and partly electronic.
Okay.
So people who hack into the systems being maintained by IEBC, that amounts to an offense. And therefore the punishments are quite hectic. And therefore prosecuting those offenses requires a lot of technical know-how, a lot of technical expertise. You are going to need a lot of IT experts to come and testify in court. We are going to adduce electronic evidence to enable you secure a conviction. So the Director of Public Prosecution is training prosecution counsel. He's developing standard operating procedures. We are also engaging in interagency collaborations with IEBC, with ORPP. We work together in a multi-agency forum so that we can approach these issues through a whole of government approach. Because one agency alone on its own is like one finger trying to lift a pen from the table. You need all the 5 fingers to lift the pen. So we work together through a multi-agency formation. We have a work plan. We are dedicated. We are training our counsel. And we have a standard of operating procedures.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Owie, Mark really didn't answer my question. Ethnicity and tribalism. What's the difference? What makes it wrong? Which one of it is a problem?
Anita, I think we do not choose where we are born and the tribe that we belong to.
Yeah.
And it's often said that positive ethnicity, after all, is not a bad thing. It's not bad to appreciate where you come from and to use it for a good purpose.
I had a professor who used to say, that there's nothing positive about ethnicity. And I think it was a book written by Koiki.
There's something positive about ethnicity. Because we have diverse backgrounds with diverse strengths.
Yes.
So if you harness those strengths that are distinct based on your ethnic pedigree and bring them together, collaborate, and join forces, for instance, in a country such as Kenya, then you emerge with a stronger and more formidable unity of purpose as among the various ethnic formations.
Yes.
But when you use ethnicity for a negative purpose, for selfish interests, then it is not a good ethnicity. So that is the distinction.
The distinction, yes. So in the election act that you talked about, and your committee now at IEBC, do you deal with hate speech?
Yes, we deal with hate speech, but we largely focus on what the politicians say at rallies and the effect of what they say at those rallies. For instance, if a politician uses his ethnicity to create fear, to threaten other tribes, and to incite his own tribe to rise against other tribes in the event those other tribes do not vote for that populace tribe's preferred candidate, then that action is
your committee can deal with that.
Is a breach of the code.
Okay.
Because that action is likely to spur hatred. It is likely to incite a tribe or a clique to rise against another and therefore occasion violence. Violence which is also a breach of the code.
Conduct.
So we do a trail of the actions of a politician, starting with his utterances and moving all the way to the ultimate result of those utterances, maybe violence, then we connect the entire chain and punish severely candidates.
You say severely, like they go to
severely because look at what the commission did in the year 2017. The commission did not go for small fish. We went for candidates seeking the positions of member of National Assembly. We went for candidates seeking the positions of governor. And we find them. Some of them are in high offices. For instance, the Speaker of Senate had to pay a fine of 1 million shillings to the commission within a period of 24 hours, failing in which he stood disqualified.
You see, just a WhatsApp Arambere is 1 million. Do you think it's not punitive enough?
And he is not alone. The other high-ranking governors and CSs currently serving who had to contend with a fine of 2 million, 3 million shillings. And this time round, we are going to make it tighter. And it's a strong warning that we are sending to candidates and political parties.
So we are saying from today, when you put up the notice, all lights go green.
Yes, Anita have said the publication of the notice that is coming out today marks the commencement of the election period. So any person has the right to report a breach of the Electoral Code of Conduct to IEBC. Any person has the right to report a contravention of the Election Offences Act to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And as Council has said, we are working closely. We are tight.
That's good.
And there will be no room for maneuvers. Yes.
So which cases go to DPP? I mean, you have your committee that deals with these cases. Or DPP, I mean, which ones go over to prosecution?
Well, there are, you realize that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution has power to prosecute contraventions of the Election Offences Act. They prosecute them in a court of law at the magistracy courts. There are those offences that cut across. For instance, violence. Violence is an offence under the Election Offences Act.
So you will find
it is also a breach of the Electoral Code of Conduct. So that should be a good warning to the would-be perpetrators. And that is why we work very closely with the DPP. We compare notes, evidence, so that there is no room, as I said earlier, for any candidate to go off the hook. Yes.
So you want to say something? Yes.
I think I want to talk about the hate speech. And, you know, most of the perpetrators of hate speech in the Kenyan context are politicians. Although we are not saying that it's limited to politicians, there are also others who engage in hate speech.
They bear the greatest responsibility.
They bear the greatest responsibility because of their position in the society and also the kind of influence that they have. So from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, we have the Political Parties Code of Conduct, which makes it an offense for political parties to engage in violence, to engage in intimidation, to engage in, influence peddling and bribery, and also to engage in discrimination of any sort, and also to incite hatred, and also to engage in hate speech. So if parties contravene that code, then there are sanctions. That's the way there are sanctions for the contravention of the Electoral Code of Conduct, and also sanctions for the contravention of the transaction.
You have powers to...
For us, we don't have powers we do collaborate with other agencies. For example, we collaborate very closely with NCIC, and we are together working on the political peace charter on political decency, and that must be signed by all the political parties.
What does that mean?
We want to promote, politics that is based on decency, that's based on, ideas and policies and competitions based on principles and agenda, not ethnic balkanization, not hate against each other, or not, engaging in matters of discrimination and violence. So this peace charter is to commit all politicians and political parties to all of them to commit to peace, that they're going to not be involved in hate speech, not to be involved in what we call discrimination, not to be involved in violence, and not to be involved in influence peddling and bribery. So once they are able to commit to that, that in itself ties their hands. And we have done sensitizations across all the parties, and that has been happening for the last 2 years. As we said, for us,
is it bearing fruit?
It is indeed bearing fruit, and the cases that you see are isolated cases. And I want to assure Kenyans that we are going to have a peaceful general election.
I think so.
We are
Do you
going to
ever
have a peaceful
think?
general election
Yeah.
because the numbers that we are seeing, of course, one is even too many.
Yeah.
One case of incitement is
Too
one
many.
too many. But we are saying that even those ones are taking, are going to take, they're going to face the full force of the law,
Yeah.
and the actions against those ones will act as a big deterrent. And most of them are seeing that there is no results. There is no gain in involving in that kind of thing. Some of them think that when they're able to incite emotions because of the heightened temperatures of campaigns, they might win. But I'm telling you, we are also sensitizing Kenyans, and Kenyans can no longer be taken for a ride.
Yeah.
They are not going to be incited. They know that politicians incite them, and they fight against each other while they go and dine together.
Yeah.
So that has been very clear to Kenyans. This time around, I think
We are going to get it right. Are we ever going to be a country that has political parties with actual ideologies? Because you don't get to see it. And maybe that is a problem we have. Lack of ideologies, we run back to our tribal cocoons, we start screaming, vitu mbaya mbaya juu ya the other tribe.
The answer to that is yes, and that is what we are attempting to do at the Electoral.
Yeah.
Well, we realize that most of these parties were registered before the creation of the Electoral in the current regulatory framework, and all of them are trying to comply with the current regulatory framework. As we're speaking now, no party is registered without depositing their ideology and defending their ideology, saying how different they are from the other parties.
And so 84 parties each have different ideologies.
Different ideologies, they are
No copy paste.
different. There's no copy paste, especially for the newly registered parties.
Yeah.
The others which were existing, and we asked them to craft their ideology.
Yeah.
And I want to assure you that going forward, with the office working the way that it's working now, we are going to have institutionalized political parties. We are going to have parties with ideology.
Just describe that. Just explain a bit of that institutionalizing of politics. What does it mean?
Institutionalization means political parties that are not one-man show. Political parties that have democratically elected governing body. Political parties that have offices. Political parties that make their internal decisions based on their structures and not a single decision by a person. So institutionalization means they have offices, they have structures, government structures, they have staff, and they're able to have policy documents, including financial policy, HR policy. They are going to have their constitutions in place. All their records of political parties are in place, and they can be inspected by anybody, any Kenyan, and they are governed based on the principles of Article 91 of the Constitution.
Okay.
Yes.
So this whole thing about a political party must have a national character.
Yes.
Again, it brings us down to tribal, what is it called, groups masquerading as political parties. There are parties that are currently campaigning and they don't have a national character. What happens to them?
I want to disagree with you on that particular aspect, because what do you mean by national character? National character means presence in at least more than, in the definition of the Political Parties Act, presence in at least more than half of the counties in Kenya.
Okay.
And that is the requirement of the Political Parties Act. You cannot register a political party if it doesn't have offices in more than 24 counties.
24?
24 counties.
I'm smiling because...
Therefore, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that we respect those offices before we register.
Yeah.
Team of officers from the Office of the Registrar of Political
You
Parties
go check them
go
out.
around the country,
Yeah.
ensure that those officers are there, those offices are manned, and those offices have the necessary documents
Yeah.
to serve members of the public.
Yeah.
Therefore, That is how the national character has been legislated in the Political Parties Act.
Okay.
The same with membership.
All right.
Political parties must have membership from more than 1,000 members at least from more than 24 counties in Kenya.
Is it being a life member, or I can change my membership?
You can change your membership at any time.
Okay.
When you think the political party that you're registered for is not serving your interest,
You move on.
it's different from the ideology that you believe in, you can move on. And it's provided for, that right is granted under Article 38 of the Constitution.
Okay.
You can join any party, provided that you don't join more than one party at one time.
Oh, okay.
You cannot be a member of two parties at the same time.
But I told you Kenyans are crafty. They do it, yeah? They actually get into those situations where they're in more than one situation.
But now we have technology. We have
okay.
Political parties management information system that will not allow one to be a member of
more than one
parties.
party.
At least we use technology in helping
Okay.
us. And that is one of the main functions of the registrar, to ensure that no Kenyan is a member of more than one political party.
Okay.
Yes.
Quite interesting. So, Mark, I say something insightful. I make some hateful speech. I am captured on camera. There's hula baloo. DPP says get investigated. But then I come back and say I'm sorry. What happens?
Well,
Within the confines of the law, I will forgive you as Anita, or you will forgive me as Mark. But I've said sorry. Si nimesema sorry. What happens?
insightful comments,
Yeah.
hateful comments, these are outlawed under the National Cohesion and Integration Act. So when someone does that, we look at the content of what he says. We also look at the context within which that speech was made. We also look at the likelihood of that speech to cause violence. We also look at the status of that person.
So it's the whole train, like Owie was saying.
Yes, evidentiary, we look at the evidence. And therefore, the first thing, as is happening, the Director of Public Prosecution has directed that investigations be done.
Yes.
Investigations first have to be done, because making an apology does not purge that act of crime. So an investigation, first of all, has to be done as per the direction of the DPP. So just making an apology will not stop an investigation from being conducted. So once a crime has been committed or is alleged to have been committed, the first thing is to ensure that investigations are actually done. Once investigations are done, the file should be forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecutions, because he needs to look at that file, he needs to review the evidence, and under the Constitution, it is the Director of Public Prosecution who makes that decision to charge. So in evaluating whether or not to charge the suspect, he will look at the evidence. He will also look at the public interest, whether it is proper in public interest to go to court. So that apology is not what will make the decision.
It's not binding.
It's not binding on the Director of Public Prosecution. He is not supposed to act as per the whims or caprices of any individual or any institution, but he's supposed to be very independent. The prosecutorial independence of the DPP is guaranteed under Article 157. So with or without an apology, the DPP has the final say whether to go to court or not to go.
But there's conciliation.
Yes, the conciliation is allowed.
So where does that play in all this? I have said I'm sorry. I am genuinely sorry for saying what I said.
People commit crimes. Sometimes they kill, they maim, violence during election, hate speech, which leads to violence. So public interest is important. The DPP has developed a very important tool. It's known as the decision to charge guidelines. It considers all those circumstances which you are talking about. It guides prosecution counsel when they are making, we come across such situations whereby conciliation is possible, or it's in the public interest that the matter be dealt with through other alternative justice systems like diversion. So the decision to chart guidelines developed by the Director of Public Prosecution is a very important tool for us. It helps us in making that decision to charge. Yes, there are cases which are suitable to be dealt with under the alternative justice systems, like diversion. But there are those which are it's where it's necessary that the matter does go to court, so that there is retribution for the victims. So the tool helps to make that decision to charge. We look at the evidentiary consideration and whether it's in the public interest. So with or without an apology, the Director of Public Prosecution
make the decision.
makes the decision.
Okay. So, Mr. Owie, let's talk about public trust.
Yes.
I think from a very pedestrian view, it should be your greatest problem right now.
Yes.
As I believe.
Yes.
So how, I would even ask where the trust got broken, but how are you working to gain public trust in this season? Because we look at you, we look up to you. We are either confident that you're going through this successfully or not, based on how you treat us as the public. So how are you earning public trust?
Thank you very much, Anita. At the beginning of this show, I mentioned that the Commission has a mandate to conduct free, fair, and credible elections. Now, the Constitution requires, under Chapter 7 on electoral systems, that a voting system or an electoral system be deployed that is simple, that is secure, that is accountable, that is transparent. Those are the wordings of the Constitution that guide the Commission. And indeed, the Commission has put in its best to ensure that the electoral system that is deployed is not an abstract system. It is a system that is simple. Look at, for instance, the voting procedure. It is very simple, and the Commission conducts extensive voter education. In fact, the Commission has a whole directorate in charge of voter education, in charge of partnership, and in charge of communication. So that is how serious the Commission takes the issue of having or instilling confidence in the public and ensuring that there is trust in the elections. But the Commission is a commission of this country. And at times it is necessary to share responsibilities. Indeed, every time it is necessary to share responsibilities. The people of this country, Kenyans, have a duty to ingrain trust in their lives. It is because of extensive mistrust that our elections is expensive. Look at, for instance, the ballot paper. The ballot paper has security features that are only comparable or even more than our currency.
The ballot paper?
Yes. Okay. And it is all because of trust. Kenyans have pushed this country to the near extent of legislating trust.
And can you?
You cannot legislate trust, and you can't enforce it. It goes back to our Constitution. Article 10, that speaks to national values and principles of governance. Article 10 binds every Kenyan. Every Kenyan to be guided by the national values that we have in this country. Patriotism is very, very important. Kenyans need to realize that this is their country. Kenyans need to appreciate that they have a stake in the elections. Elections is too big an enterprise to be left to a few, if not IEBC. All of us have to come together, and that is why the Commission is doing everything possible to educate the masses on the electoral process, to engage in outreach programs with stakeholders in order for them to understand that all the commission does is to discharge its mandate. The people must own the process. If anything, the commission has an object of ensuring that the sovereignty of the people is protected. So this is collegiate. This is for all of us. So I would urge Kenyans to team up with the commission, not to sit back and say, it does not matter how you vote. That what matters is those who count the votes, as the popular adage goes.
Yes.
They are part of the electoral system.
Yeah.
So if elections is not well done, Kenyans are equally to blame for that failure. So they must come out. For instance, in the current period, we are undertaking an enhanced voter registration exercise.
Oh, how long is it going to be?
It is running from the 17th of January to the 6th of February.
Okay.
But that does not mean that we'll immediately close. Of course, at an opportune time, the commission will issue a statement guiding on the other processes that must follow. For instance, we have audit of the register, which by law must be undertaken. We have inspection of the register that must be undertaken. Then we have verification that requires citizens who have registered as voters to visit their polling stations to confirm that they are indeed in the register and that they will.
And I have a question on that.
To vote.
How do you mitigate against what is it called, voter migration? Like, you know, the politicians are complaints that watu walivote Nairobi,
Yes.
wamekimbizwa kwenda kuvote Siaya.
Yes.
You know,
that is an offense.
Yeah.
The law contemplates that if you want to register, you move from your place of abode and go to a registration center and register. It is not expected that you will be hoarded.
But can I vote at my center at 6 a.m. when you open?
Yes.
And I hop onto a bus and go and vote up country?
You cannot. You cannot. Try it, Anita, and you will be a guest of Odpp.
Of Mark.
You will be a guest of Mark.
Yeah.
Try it, because the registration system that we have is a very concrete registration system. It does not just involve filling of the form by the applicant. It also involves the taking of your biometrics that are unique, and you know, fingerprints are unique identifiers. So you
no
will not vote because the commission will deploy, and did even deploy in 2017, the Kenya Integrated Election Management System, KIMSKIP, that identifies you. So unless you are a Kenyan that wants to be a guest of ODPP and to go to the gallows, I urge that you refrain from making that attempt, because it is tight. It is not easy to penetrate. Yes. Okay. So on trust, that is my urge to Kenyans. The commission is doing its part, but Kenyans also have a duty and a responsibility as patriotic citizens to embrace trust in elections. Yes.
Do you deal with trust issues? Do you tell them? How do you get political parties to? Because I think that's our problem, really. They're the ones who come out with their own, they make a lot of noise, they divide us. Yet, like you said, they're the essence of a democratic society. But they're the ones driving all this mistrust, hatred, hate speech. Do you get to sensitize them about this thing?
Yes, we do. And I want from the onset to say that trust is very critical. And many times trust is about perception. And the electoral integrity does not necessarily depend on the processes. The processes can be perfect. The commission can do its work.
The laws are clear.
The laws are clear. But if there is that perception that things are not working right, that there is that mistrust, then at the end of the day, we are going to have disputes. We are going to have even the governments created through such elections that are mistrust might not even have that legitimacy to govern properly. And we have experienced that a lot of value because of mistrust. Many times it's not even about, even we go to the extent of not trusting our judicial system. Not only the commission, or even those who are working closely with the commission to make the elections free, fair, and credible.
Yeah.
But also our judicial system. You have seen Kenyans saying that they don't even trust some of the judicial decisions.
Yeah.
So this is a Kenyan problem.
It is a Kenyan problem.
And as we have said, we must take our responsibility and duty as citizens. It's upon us to make institutions, public institutions, accountable throughout the system, not just during the election day, throughout the electoral cycle. We need to have information. We need to know what are the details, how are these processes conducted. So if we have information, we have the knowledge of the process, then that doubt will be clear. For example, there are weird perceptions that even dead people vote, or
what I was asking is the way.
Ballot boxes are stashed, and a lot of perceptions that you don't win because of voters, but because of those who count.
Yeah.
Those are weird perceptions, and maybe it's from our history.
It is
From our history, from those days when we had the one-party system.
Yeah.
We are being told of stories of how elections were being conducted, but I think we have gone beyond that. The new constitution and the 2010 constitution has really given Kenyans a very good framework for elections. So for us as Odpp, we do a lot of sensitization. We have what is called Political Parties Liaison Committee, which is a dialogue platform between Odpp, political parties, and IBC. Through those forums, we do a lot of sensitization of political parties. We share with them election timelines. We share with them all the information about elections, the processes, and that has contributed to political parties having more information. And we are also collaborating with other state agencies to ensure that all the information that these political parties require are given. And once they have that information, then the level of the trust will go up.
Yeah. Before we get into corruption, Mr. Wee,
Yes.
we're a tech-savvy nation world over.
Yes.
Yes. Celebrated, internet penetration is high. We are the most active, I think, on Twitter. I don't know, but KOT is quite active. We are actually tech-savvy as a nation.
Yes.
Why can't we vote technologically?
Well, our laws provide for that alternative.
Okay.
The deployment of electronic voting. But there are certain conditions that are precedent to the deployment of that technology. It requires serious discussion and serious public participation for us to go e-voting, entirely e-voting. Currently, we have a mix. Of course, voting is manual.
Yes.
But we have technology that then facilitates, for instance, camps.
Yeah.
And it is step by step. Maybe at some point in time, we will get to e-voting. But think about e-voting and the trust subject that we are discussing.
Yeah.
Are Kenyans ready for e-vote, given our trust levels? You need to trust a lot.
Yeah.
Because the current voting pattern or voting system requires a voter to go to the polling station.
Yes.
He's identified, he's issued with a ballot paper, and he casts his vote to believe that it is now cast.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
And even take a photo.
Yes, and even take a photo, which is not right. It's an offense.
Okay.
It's an offense.
Yeah.
Imagine a Kenyan at this point in time voting through electronic means. We need trust that vote will be counted. So we need to have a serious discourse about that alongside trust.
Yeah.
Because e-voting can only succeed
There's trust.
if there's trust.
The other question then, why can't we vote over a period of time? Because there's so much tension placed on one day, so much tension that can definitely escalate to other things.
Yes.
Why can't we vote over a period of time?
Again, trust.
Okay.
Our Kenyan style
So then how do you deal with trust, Mark?
and perception.
How do you deal with trust?
Thank you very much, Anita.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said. Kenyans need to trust our institutions. These institutions have been in the civil service for a very long time, over a decade.
Yeah.
And I don't ever remember my supervisor or my boss telling me to favor any political candidate over another. You are only given instructions to work in a very impartial and neutral manner. If, in fact, if you are found to be favoring any political party, that is not one of the principles espoused in the public service. And I believe you will be sacked immediately. So Kenyans need to get out of that hangover. I know we emerged from a very a dark history where a lot of crimes used to be committed during the election period. Yeah. Our democracy was not that strong, but we now have very good legislations. The Election Offences Act, enacted around 2016, a very robust constitution. So we are growing stronger and stronger every day as a democracy. These institutions are very independent institutions, and let Kenyans trust these institutions. Let them not trust one individual whose conduct is very questionable over the institutions that are funded by their taxes. By the
taxpayers. And when you talk about individuals, let's talk about corruption. DPP has been on record saying we should kill the corruption, start slaying the dragon from the ballot. Why aren't we doing that?
We will go out there to continue sensitizing the public. These institutions have prepared. You have heard what the ORPP, the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, is doing, what the IEBC is doing, the Director of Public Prosecutions is doing. So the institutions are really preparing. But now the question is, the stakeholders are also citizens, the wananchi. They also need to prepare. As these institutions prepare to ensure that elections are free, fair, and conducted in a very peaceful environment, the wananchi also has a duty. Ultimately, the democratic will of the people, exercised through a free and fair election, should be the basis of government, the basis of government's legitimacy. Yeah. So it is now also time for these citizens to also vet the candidates that come before them. Let them vet them, not based on their tribe or even other considerations, but their performance in public office and their conduct and their character. In some countries, they even go as far back as primary school, where you attended kindergarten. They look at your character. So let us not just look at somebody who comes driving in a Hummer or a Range Rover today and vote for him because he's driving a big car or something like that.
He's rich, he can't stay.
Or he is. Let us look at his character, gauge his character. When you are going for an interview for any job, you don't get that job easily. You are interviewed, your academic qualification,
on merit. Yeah.
You are given that job on merit. Yeah. But when it comes to politics, citizens, we want to sensitize them. Yes. Let us not vote for the one who screams loudest or engages in a lot of rhetoric. Let us look at that person's record.
So is it voter literacy that is needed? Because we still end up in the same space of voting people with questionable character. And maybe now, as a citizen, I would feel like you're putting too much pressure on me. It's almost escapist to say, you exercise your duty as a citizen, not bringing in. But why can't you, as IEBC, not give them, what is it called? Allow them
tickets.
The tickets. Why can't you just stop it at there?
Okay. That's quite Anita, that's a sticky issue. The commission has a committee that considers concerns on leadership and integrity of candidates. The leadership and integrity vetting committee.
There is.
We have that committee, and in the year 2017, that committee disqualified 2 candidates on account of want of integrity. But the problem, Anita, is our constitution. We enacted a liberal constitution. That constitution confers upon any Kenyan the right to contest as a candidate.
Okay.
It does not matter that that person has been convicted, as long as of a criminal offense, as long as he's pursuing an appeal. And the Constitution says that he must exhaust all possible appeal opportunities or mechanisms. Yeah. So he'll be convicted, files an appeal.
Yeah. As he's running for office.
As he's running for office. You can't bar him because the Constitution allows him to do that. But the Commission has been able to disqualify certain persons because the same Constitution bars a person who has been removed from public service on account of abuse of office from contesting. And that is the clause that we used in 2017, and we are keen on using it. The Commission in the year 2020 made an announcement or a statement to that effect that if you have been removed from a public office on account of abuse of office, please do not attempt to be a candidate because we will not clear you. And
corruption.
But first of all, I feel like RPP should be the gatekeeper.
All right.
You tell politicians, or you tell politicians, you cannot allow you, because of governance and all that, you can't allow you to come in, bring in people with questionable characters to run for office.
Yes.
I mean, in your sensitization efforts. Sure. And then political party funding. Again, the sources of funds is questionable.
Yes.
Again, it's, I think, just me, not anywhere, but that you should be able to put a cap and say, we need to know the source of your funding before you get into the system, you know, because you're going to release them to us. To trust them because you've seen their ideology, you've seen their financial books and all. What do you do as an organization to just help Kenyans eliminate these people?
Okay, thank you very much. Corruption is a monster, and it's a problem. It's a very serious problem in Kenya. And a single institution cannot be just tasked to fight corruption. That's why when people start, boxing and the ESCC, we need to really say that this is a national issue, and all government institutions, all public institutions, and all citizens have to join the war of corruption. So from the office of the RPP, we still have a number of regulations guiding political parties. For example, issues to do with ensuring that there is no corruption within the party administration, party management is one thing. During nominations, again, they're supposed to be above board. There's a requirement to abide by Chapter 6 of the Constitution in all the undertakings, and therefore, as we enforce the Political Parties Act, we ensure that even being an official of a party, if you are not cleared, you cannot be an official of a political party, let alone be a candidate in a national election.
Wow.
So that is where we start, and we do a lot of sensitization. But unfortunately, there is also need, there are cultural determinants to even corruption in Kenya. Sometimes we glorify corrupt people. Just because they're able to put a few shillings in our pockets, we forget about our conscience, and we also forget about what is good. And corruption does not necessarily mean embezzlement of funds. Any dishonest action is corruption, including immoral activities. These are the things that we need to really tell Kenyans, and that is not just about stealing money or embezzlement. Of course, it's a very serious thing, but any dishonest action, including breaking of promises, including lying, including, immoral actions, these are corruption. And we need to fight it from very early stages. We need to look at even our schools, our primary schools, and start curriculum on these issues of corruption. Then, because sometimes citizens will require somebody who delivers goods rather than an honest non-performer. You see, they call it something like that. It's better corrupt.
At a later, the proceeds.
He delivers the goods, and he talks very well, and rather than an honest person who wants to do things according to the law. He is seen as lazy, he is seen as somebody who cannot deliver. You see, and so that is the kind of notions that need to change. We need to change our perception, and corruption needs to be fought in our schools, in our churches and mosques, and even we make it a national conversation.
Yes, we should. I want to close the conversation because of time. Sometimes you think 1 hour is too much until you start talking and discover you go overboard. So I just read some, not all, of some of the comments on Facebook. Good morning, Anita. Thank you for restoring Facebook live coverage. It was off for some time. Say hi to the guests, Ms. Salimika, the Kenyan way, and appreciate them for noble work they are doing in ensuring that the elections are conducted as per the Election Code of Conduct. My question to the panelists is that with the growing use of social media, there's a lot of inciting and inflammatory statements made by political leaders and the public as well. Are the respective institutions well equipped to handle these cases vis-a-vis the freedom of expression? Do you have technology to check on online activities? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Briefly,
Thank you.
yes.
Maybe before I go on that on corruption, we cannot remove the citizens from the fight against corruption completely.
No.
It's a chain. They are very important. For the first time in the history of this country, we've seen a member of parliament being convicted for corruption. It has never happened in the history of Kenya. We have seen cabinet secretaries for the first time in the history of Kenya being charged in a court of law for corruption. Not one, not two, more than 5 cabinet secretaries.
This progress.
Yes, we've seen governors in court. So the institutions are doing what they are doing, but the citizen, their constitution also allows them to recall a member of parliament who is engaging in corruption. We've not seen any single petition to recall a member of parliament.
But they are our relatives, ma'am.
So that is where the problem is. So on social media, hate speech is an offense, and yes, it is being perpetuated on social media. The Director of Public Prosecution has developed standard operating procedures. We look at the status of the person who is making that hate speech.
The same process.
Exactly.
Okay.
The context within which it is made. Investigations will be called for. Like in the case of Lamu, the Director of Public Prosecutions will write to the investigatory agencies to carry out their investigation prior to bringing the file to the Odpp. Some of those cases are for people who open social media accounts using
the pseudonyms.
They are not known. So investigations will be done, and the files will be forwarded to the Director of Public Prosecution. So we are prepared for it.
Social media. Someone has asked, Michael has asked, how do you institutionalize parties in the era of independent candidates? Is it realistic?
Yes, it's realistic. We agree that Kenyan Constitution gives room for independent candidates, but basically Kenya is also a multi-party democracy. So for those who opt to run as independent candidates, they have the freedom. But Kenyans have rights to join, to form and register a political party and join political party. So for us, we are interested with those who have registered parties. Those ones must be institutionalized.
All right.
Yes. And you realize that the number of independent candidates vis-a-vis who met in the elections vis-a-vis the number of people elected through parties are not comparable. Because most of our legislature, people in parliament and also in the county assemblies are party, they are born through parties. And one of the reasons that led to growing number of independent candidates is political party primaries that are not free and fair. From our office, we are now also sanitizing that. And you will, in future, you will see that the number of independent candidates will reduce.
All right, that word sanitize is quite contentious in this country. We, Society of Forensic Science Researchers and Experts Association, there's an association that would like to collaborate with, especially on matters of forensic science litigation, evidence, and connected matters. Maybe we'll have to reach out to them. Then Odpp says, as a criminologist, I'm delighted to see some progress made by DPP as far as justice is concerned with the issue of decongesting the prisons. It's a different story. Alternative measures must be fully implemented. And it is the same guy who says he's locked from remote village in Nandi County, Mosop constituency, Kurgung Surungai ward. Ni vizuri kusema ni watu wametoka. So I won't be able to read everything, but I want to thank you for apparently it's been 1 hour. I'm not even done with what I wanted to ask. But I think some things, we talked about corruption, we talked about hate speech, and that's quite important. And of course, political parties, which you say are an essence for our democracy to thrive. I'm really wishing you well. We'll call you again. The season has just started. We call it the crazy season. The season has just begun. And we definitely we have to have this discussion. Like voter apathy, we haven't talked about it, what you're going to do about it. We haven't talked about that. We will have to talk about corruption and what you're going to do about leaders who are going forth with this. And I think the DP has been saying there needs to be changes in the law to stop this from happening. And of course, political parties. I'm telling you, I'm so glad to meet you because I get to tell you, you're the gatekeepers. You know, because you unleash these people to us and then you have to deal with them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the show. It's been 1 hour. The hour really runs, time really runs quite fast. But I'm grateful that you joined us today. Thank you for those who commented and asked questions. You can keep asking and then we definitely get answers from the office and of course from the partners. We welcome you again next week to just continue the discussion with us. We want to talk about election preparedness, hate speech, your role as a citizen, and there's so many small topics that come with that one overriding topic. So we'll have these discussions as we go on. And of course, next week, we'll let you know what we are going to talk about. It's been a great discussion. Again, the ball is in our court as citizens. The laws are there, but then we need to do more and participate more to decide who runs our country and how we are governed. So it's all well up to us. So today we have the office of the Registrar of Political Parties. We had Odpp as always, and we had IEBC. And of course, there are many more partners who can have this discussion with us. So let us know from where you are what you want us to talk about with regards to election. What don't you understand? What do you want clarity on? And of course, we'll get to respond to those. Otherwise, I want to wish you a great Friday, a great weekend ahead. And of course, let's meet again next week to see what you're discussing. God bless you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Correct. Let them just, yeah.